Hi. So today I want to look at fixing this issue with layouts on. It's a very simple issue just to start us off. So there's a problem here. If you look at the story, this is my app. It's called Toddler Words. It's available in the App Store. I'll put a link in the comments to download the app so you can have a closer look at it on your device. But if you look at this is the storyboard we're dealing with here, and if you look at this play button, Um, and look at this, we can see that it doesn't look quite as how we would like it if it's made itself a bit longer, which has made it, just look a bit daft. So if we stop that and have a look at it on the iPhone 6 Plus, you'll see it's a bit more extreme, obviously with a wider display. Uh, it pulls it out a bit further, and just makes it look terrible. So if we just wait, see there, it's just not looking very good at all. So this is a bit of an issue. This is a live app, so since the iPhone 6 Plus is available, this is what people will see, and it's not great. So what we need to look at how we can sort it. So this, if you've not dealt with constraints before, I'll try and describe how I deal with constraints. Just describing what I do as I go along, and you'll be able to see how you can maybe implement these in your apps to make your displays how you want them on different devices. So incidentally, if we go down to the iPhone 4S with a thinner display, that it looks perfect. It looks exactly how we want it to look on that one. We'll just wait for that to load, and you can see. So here we go. So 4S, this is exactly how we want it to look, but it should look like that on all devices. So what's happened is the constraints are making it pull itself out and look a bit distorted. So first of all, just describe what the constraints here are doing. That may help you understand them a bit. It took me a while to actually understand what all this constraints nonsense was about. So the first one we see here is leading space to super view. So this is this space here. The super view is the view before this, so it's its parent view. So this space here is what we're talking about on the leading space, and that's equal to 44, and that's a constant value. The height here, height is this height, so the height again is constant. So already we can begin to understand why this is causing an issue. So the leading space is always going to be 44, and the height is always going to be 48. And that's going to cause us a problem if the display is wider. So we're also aligning the center x-axis to the same center as this view, so it's always going to be in the middle, and the center y aligning to this background here, this blue sort of patterned background is called play underscore bg.png. That's just the background for this storyboard. So in order to fix this problem, we need to change these constraints, not necessarily that one, but certainly the height. And again, probably we don't need this one. We can probably get rid of that because we're already constraining where it's going to appear on this x-axis by this part, so it's aligned to the center. So if we just get rid of that one to start with, we can see here already these dotted lines here. These mean that this size, this is what the actual size is. So it's showing there's a difference between the constraints and the actual what the constraints that you've set and what you see here. So if we one thing that we can do to see that in action is if you highlight the view that you want to see and then click on this little bit here. Well, not like that, sorry. So click it like that and then update the frame on the selected view. You'll see what happens there. Just it gets very wide. We don't really want that. That's not going to work for us. So just undo that. Also in here, there's a bit to update the frames for all the views. You don't really want to do that too much. I mean, you can undo it. You can just Command Z to undo what you've done there, but that has some dodgy effects. If you've got things that aren't constrained, it'll just fire them off the screen, and then it takes a while to get everything back unless you catch it with a Command Z quickly. So we need to do something about the size. I think the best thing to do here would be to constrain the size of the length of this. So if we do control and then constrain the width as well, so the width is always going to be 201, the height's always going to be 46. It's always going to be centered in the view, and it's always going to be centered so horizontally and vertically. So we'll just view that on the 4S to start with and see what that's done to it, see if it's made any difference. It does take a while to build. So here we go. So that looks fine. But what I'm expecting is that it might look a bit strange when we go sort of up the scale a bit. So rather than going through them all, because we know it looks alright on these ones, the 6 Plus is really where we'll see if there's an issue with this. So if we go into the 6 Plus, and then we'll just wait for it to load. So it's constrained the size, it's in the middle. Actually, it doesn't look that bad, but it is a bit on the small side. Um, so we can see if there's something we can do about that. I mean, it's perfect, sort of the ratio here is fine, but it's maybe just a bit small for the 6 Plus. So that's fine. So what we've done there is we've set the width to constant 201 pixels and the height to constant 46, aligned it in the center X and Y. So because it looks a bit funny on the iPhone 6, it looks a bit small, like maybe there was a mistake, we can change the width here. This will change it for everything. So if we change it to, like, say 400 by, well, 400 is probably a bit big actually. If we say 300 by 75, and then just update it, you can see that's a lot bigger. So that might look too big on the smaller phones. So what we can do is we can set it to less than or equal to 300 on, or less than or equal to 75, and that'll make it fit a bit nicer. So let's have a look on the iPhone 6 first. Okay, so that looks a lot better there. Nice and big, and you know exactly what you're doing with that. It's a button. Before it was probably a bit too small. Let's just have a look at it on the iPhone 4S. Now this is a lot smaller screen, but because we've set that to be less than or equal to, it should still keep it within the bounds of the screen. So yeah, it's still in there, but maybe a bit too big now. I'm not sure if I think that's a bit too big or not. Let's have a look on the 5S just for the sake of it. So yeah, again, the real issue we're having here is that these screen sizes all sort of relate to that, but when you get to the iPhone 6, it's got a bit more space around the edges, so it looks a bit bigger. What we can do about that is we can constrain the aspect ratio of this. So you've said you always want it to be 4:1, and you always want the size to be less than or equal to 300 or less than or equal to 75. So that's kind of like saying the same thing. If we get rid of this background for a minute, we'll be able to see what. So there's the background there. So we just want to. It's an image view with that background in it, so we'll just get rid of it and then we'll add it back in later. This is instantly what happened with the other view up there. That's why it looks all white, because I had to take it out to sort the constraints out. So if we just delete this, then we'll be able to relate this to the super view instead of that view. So if we control click on there and drag to the edge, we can see trailing space to container margin. and we want to set that to like a constant, or not a constant value, but we want to see it should always be like roughly this size. Incidentally, you'll see this dotted line box up here, as that's indicating that the box will actually show up the top now, and that's because we don't have the center Y with the play background anymore, so we want to put that back in, but we'll do it with a container margin, so center vertically in the container, that takes it back down, so that's sorted out. So we've got the trailing space, and we'll put in the leading space as well. Right, so these are currently set to -6, and we don't really want it to be that. We want it to be more in on the phone. So if we set it to say 10 on the trailing space, well, in fact, we'll just set it to 10 on both, and we'll see how that works out. So that's made it a bit smaller. That looks a bit better to me. Maybe 15 would be even better. Yeah, that's good, right? So that's kind of what we want. This is, again, this is sort of reflecting the smaller form factor. So, and what you can see here is that it's not constrained it to that 15 pixels on either side, because the width is set to 300. The width will always be less than or equal to 300, so that's taken priority here, and the height. But if we look on one of the smaller phones, so we'll just stop that and then have a look on the iPhone 4S, and we should see that it's brought it in at the sides and made the button a bit bigger, or not bigger, but you know, the right sort of ratio. So there you go. It's still the same ratio, and it can't really tell if that's had an effect on the sides. But what we can do, if we take that out, if we take this out, it'll change it back to how it was with the minimal space at the side. So having that in has created that space at the side. So we can set that to be less than or equal to, or more than or equal to 15, which will make it so that it can go smaller if the no, not that one. So that it can go smaller if the device needs it. So this will be more than as well. Sorry. Right, let's have a look at that in the 4S again. You see there, that looks fine. And if we go back to the 6 Plus, just stop that. Oh gosh, and then play it again. We can see there's a lot more space at the sides there, so we've given it the option to make the space at the sides bigger by doing this greater than 15 on each side, greater than or equal to 15. So when it gets a smaller screen, the space at the sides will be constrained to either equal to 15. Well, it'll stay equal to 15, but the width of the button and the height of the button can go less than 300 in order to keep this, to keep everything looking as it should. The In order to keep this aspect ratio right, so the aspect ratio is set constant to 4:1, but we can adjust the width and the height as we need to, according to whether or not these sides are going to be bigger. So that's sorted out. So the last thing, just before that actually, the last thing here I can see is that this is set to align the center y-axis to -0.5 of a pixel. We don't really want that, we want it set to 0, so we'll just set that to 0 and then it's right in the middle. And that's all, that's that all sorted. So so back to just fix that other bit that we took out, we need to put in the background image view, so we'll just do that now. So that was it. Oh, it's inside this view, but it's above everything, so you see there it puts itself right in the middle, so we need to constrain this again as well, so more constraints to deal with. So we want this to be top space to the layout guide, bottom space to layout guide, trailing space to container margin, and trailing space to container margin again. And what we can do here is, obviously these numbers reflect what is set to just now, so trailing space to super view, take that down to 0, or -16, and that takes it past that margin. And just because this isn't important, we'll just, in order to avoid any white space at the edges, we'll just take it down to -20. Same with this one, we'll take that down to -20 as well, just to take it over the other edge. The bottom layout guide one, take that to -20, so we're just taking everything down to -20 so that it pops right over the edges and you can't see any white space at the edge. We'll take that one a bit more because there's a bit of white space there, so we'll go 25. There we go. So that should have sorted out, and we just need to set the image in there again. So what was it called? Play background. Play background. There we go. And we'll just start the app again and make sure that's not screwed anything up. You also see this settings button here that's grayed out because it's hidden. It does actually do something, but I've taken the functionality out so that you don't see it in the application, because I didn't want to add that functionality in on this build. So this looks good. You can see the background's working fine there. The button's in a good position. It's not stretched out or anything. We'll just stop that and have a look. Next on the 5, and then we'll go down to the 4S just to make sure that it's looking good all throughout. So here we go, a bit of a skinnier display. So we're constrained by the 15 pixels and also the ratio, but the size of the button will have gotten smaller. You don't really see a difference because of the aspect ratio. It just sort of slots it in and makes it look nicer. The background's in there as well. It all looks fine. There's no white space around the edges. We'll just try the 4S as well, just to make sure that that's fine. Yep, all looking good. The background's in the right place. The button's nice and big, so you know exactly what you're doing. We're all good there. This layout needs sorted out. We'll do that. That'll be a longer job to sort that one out. So there's obviously some constraints going on there which need to be looked at, but that's a bit of a bigger job, so we will deal with that in another one. Okay, so I'll put a link to this app, which hopefully looks a bit better than that. There is a bug in it on the App Store, which is why I started doing this. There's a little bit of a bug on it. If you can see what the bug is, leave a comment. But yeah, thanks for watching, and there'll be more videos soon.